Is it on, yeah? Alright, so thank you everybody for coming to the Bhagavad Gita class today evening. Today we'll be reading from chapter 18, verse 50. Before we start the class, I'll start off with the short kirtan and please do respond. So, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Ramana Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Mishudanandan Braj Jana Ranjana Yashodanandan Braj Jana Ranjana Yashodanandan Braj Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. जय राधा गोकुल नंद, राधा गोकुल नंद, राधा गोकुल नंद श्री राधे. जय सीता राम लक्ष्मण हनुमान, जय सीता राम लक्ष्मण हनुमान. जय गौरा निताय, गौरा निताय, गौरा निताय, जय गौरा निताय. जय जय प्रभुपाद, 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद. निताय गौरा हरि बोल, हरि बोल, हरि बोल, निताय गौरा हरि बोल. श्री श्री राधा गोकुलानंद की, श्री श्री सीताराम लक्ष्मण हनुमान की, श्री श्री गौर निताय की, Srila Prabhupada ki. So just before I start, I'm going to recite the invocation prayers, which is prayers to seek blessings from my seniors and everybody present here, that I may say something useful. Just going to recite this. Yeah. And Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shra Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parichana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Shra. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchan Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vanchakapatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivedanta. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So again, we're reading from chapter 18, verse 50 today. I'll recite the verse, and then the verse is up on the screen. So if anyone would like to volunteer, one Prabhu and one Mataji perhaps, and then I'll read the word for translation and purport, and then go into the class. So, Siddhim prapto yata brahma tatapnoti nibodhame samase neva konteya nishagnan yasya yapara. Siddhim prapto yata brahma tatapnoti nibodhame samase neva konteya nishtagnan yasya yapara. Would anyone like to volunteer to recite? Thank you. Siddhim prapto yata brahma tatapnoti nibodhame samase neva konteya nishtagnyasya yaparaha. Anybody else? Siddhim prapto yata brahma tatapnoti nibodhame samase neva konteya nishtagnyasya yapara. Thank you. So now for the word-for-word translation, please repeat after me. Siddhim, perfection. Praptaha, achieving. Yata, as. Brahma, the supreme. Tatha, so. Apnoti, one achieves. Nibodha, try to understand. Me, from me. Samasena, summarily. Eva, certainly. Konteya, a son of Kunti. Nishta, the stage. Nanasya, of knowledge. Ya, which. Para, transcendental. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O son of Kunti, learn from me how one who has achieved this perfection can attain to the supreme perfectional stage, Brahman, the stage of highest knowledge, by acting in the way I shall now summarize. O son of Kunti, please repeat. Learn from me how one who has achieved this perfection can attain to the supreme perfectional stage, Brahman, the stage of highest knowledge, by acting in a way I shall now summarize. The purport. The Lord describes for Arjuna how one can achieve the highest perfectional stage simply by being engaged in his occupational duty, performing that duty for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One attains the supreme stage of Brahma simply by renouncing the result of his work for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. That is the process of self-realization. The actual perfection of knowledge is in attaining pure Krishna consciousness. That is described in the following verses. So, actually, to give some context, this chapter talks about the perfection of renunciation. So here Krishna is describing the perfection of renunciation. So many people are under the misconception that vairagya or renunciation means to renounce or give up all activities. To consider any action within the fold of materialistic society to be illusion, and therefore think that to become active in the sense of going exclusively to a holy place or to be in seclusion, and as they say, just let the world go on its own way. That of course is a sense of renunciation, but Krishna in the 18th chapter is describing the perfection of renunciation. The perfection of renunciation is to work as Krishna wants you to work. After all, the Bhagavad Gita is being spoken to Arjuna to be able to convince him to perform his duty of fighting in the battle of Kurukshetra. Whereas Arjuna was in the mood of renouncing everything and going to a holy place and chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, but Krishna is telling Arjuna that real renunciation is to use all the gifts Krishna has given us in his service, and this is the perfection of renunciation. So everything is spiritual if it is used in the service of the spiritual source of everything, who is Krishna. So the difference between material and spirituality is the consciousness in which something is used. When we use something for our sense gratification, that is material. When we use that same thing in the service of Lord Hari, that is the perfection of renunciation. Srila Rupa Goswami taught us, prapanchitaya buddhya hari sambandhani vastuna mumukshambi parityagyo vairagyam valgu katyate. So that's the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, chapter 1, verse 126. That if you have something, if that could be used in God's service, and in the name of renunciation you give that up, that is called incomplete renunciation. Complete renunciation is to utilize everything, whatever intelligence you have, whatever energy you have, whatever wealth you have, whatever designation within the society you have, whatever abilities you have, to be conscious that they are coming from Krishna, and to utilize everything for his pleasure. So here, Krishna is explaining how the perfection of renunciation is to perform your duty for the all-pervading Supreme Lord, who is the source of all living beings, or as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, verse 13, Ata pumbhir dvija shreshta vanashram vibhagashaha swanustitasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam. So the translation of this is, O best among the twice born, it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve is by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation according to caste divisions, which is Brahma, Shudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya. And orders of life to please the personality of Godhead. So the orders of life are Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. But the perfection is acting within your Varna ashram to please Krishna. So the advanced devotee does not see anything as unconnected with Krishna. Unlike the Mayavadi philosophers, a devotee does not see the material world as false, because he knows that everything in the material world is connected to Krishna. A devotee knows how to utilize everything in the service of the Lord. And this is the character of a Mahabhagavat. The gopis saw the plants, creepers, and forest trees loaded with fruits and flowers, and they were ready to serve Krishna. In this way, they immediately remembered the worshipable Lord Sri Krishna. They did not simply see plants, creepers, and trees the way a mundaner sees them. So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 47, that it's better to perform one's occupation imperfectly than to accept another's occupation and to perform it perfectly. So prescribed duties for one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. So some people are under the misconception that all activities in this world are sinful. Anything that is not done in the service of God is actually sinful. But the highest dharma is to simply perform your duties in Krishna consciousness. Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai. Is to perform your duties in Krishna consciousness for the pleasure of Krishna. But how do we know what is the pleasure of Krishna? For that, we must have the guidance of Krishna's representatives, the great sadhus and faculty, how Krishna best wants us to serve him. A surrendered devotee allows Krishna to decide this. A neophyte devotee will perform his occupation according to the way he wants to do it for Krishna. But an advanced soul, his desire is, Krishna, how can I please you? Whatever you want, that is my duty. So, in relation to this, I'd like to tell you a story. This narration explains the quality of such a surrendered soul who is willing to do anything that Krishna so desires. So, in South India, there were many great Vaishnava temples. There is the Venkateshwar temple, and then there's the temple of Sri Rangam, or Sri Ranganath Swami. These two very famous temples are worshipped by the great descendants of Sri Ramanujacharya. So Srila Ramanujacharya is one of the great founders of the four Vaishnava Sampradayas. So there are four authentic, unbroken lines of disciplic succession in which the pure message of God has come down through the ages. One of them is Shri Sampradaya, another is Brahma Sampradaya, another is Kumara Sampradaya, and finally the Rudra Sampradaya. So now, Ramanujacharya was a great, powerful spiritual master who revived and spread the glories of the Shri Sampradaya throughout all of India. So Ramanujacharya was the disciple of a very, very great saint who had a very interesting life. His name was Yamunacharya. Yamunacharya was a Brahmin, but he was famous in history as being a great king. So the question is, what is a great Brahmin doing on a throne of a king? He was not a descendant of a king. In fact, he was born as the son of Natha Muni, who was basically a sadhu. They had no money, nothing. So how did he become a king? When Ramanacharya was only 5 years old, he went to the Gurukul of his Guru Maharaj, whose name was Bhavasyacharya. Bhavasyacharya was a very humble and saintly person, and he trained Yamunacharya in Sanskrit grammar. In the study of the scripture and in living a disciplined and pure life in devotion to God. When Yamunacharya was 12 years old, he had grasped everything that his teacher had taught him. Now it is described that one day his spiritual master, Bhaktivedanta, was away, and all the other students, his classmates, had all left for the school holidays, and in the school he was the only one present. At that time, some visitors came. In those days, to be a pandit was very prestigious within Indian society, and your name as a pandit would become famous to the degree you were able to defeat other pandits. So scholars would challenge others, and if they would defeat, they would become victorious and very famous. So there was one pandit at that time named Kolahala. He was so incredibly learned that nobody could defeat him. His mind was so brilliant, and his knowledge of the scriptures was so thorough, and his pride was so mountain-like that he would just travel throughout the kingdom and challenge everyone, and he would easily defeat everyone in logic and argument. Because he was so expert in juggling words and defeating others, he became the king. He didn't become the king. At this time, this was the Pandya dynasty. The king of the Pandyas liked him very much, and therefore the king made a law that any pandit that was challenged by Kolahala must accept the challenge and must debate him. And if anyone loses to Kolahala, he must pay tax to the king every year. So this visitor, who came to the ashram of Yamunacharya's guru, who was teaching, when the visitor came to the ashram, Yamunacharya's guru happened to be one of the disciples of Kolavala, and he came to collect tax, and he was in a very angry mood. And he said, "I want to speak to your spiritual master, Bhaktivedanta." So he said that to Yamunacharya. So Yamunacharya was very mild, very sweet in his words, and very gentle by nature. He said, "I'm sorry, my dear sir, my Guru Maharaj is not here. Can I ask who you are and why you want him so badly?" He said, "Because your spiritual master is a rascal. My Guru Maharaj, who is the greatest of all learned scholars, who is undefeated in any argument, he completely defeated your spiritual master. And your spiritual master must now pay tax. And because he has not paid tax in 2 years, we are about to put him to a death sentence. So we want him to pay." The 12-year-old boy said to this person, he said, "You are so proud that any spiritual master that allows such a foolish disciple to be so proud must also be a fool. I think your guru is the greatest fool. And beside that, he is challenging everyone to debate, he said. I want to debate him." This messenger of Kolahala became very angry. Then he went back to his spiritual master, Kolahala, and said, "You know this 12-year-old student of Bhaktivedanta? He wants to challenge you to a debate." And Kolahala began to laugh and said, "A 12-year-old boy challenge me?" He said, "Go tell the king about it." The king sent a message back to the child saying that, do you know, if you are defeated, you'll be killed by the offense you have committed to the great Kolahala. Either you pay your taxes or you debate him. But because of this offense, if you lose, you'll be punished to death. So Yamunacharya sent the message back. I'll be very glad to debate with Kolavala. But if you want me to debate with him, you have to send a royal palanquin to pick me up. At this time, Bhava Acharya had returned and was thinking, oh my God, what have you put yourself into? Do you know who this man is? He completely defeated me. How are you going to do anything against him? Yamunacharya said, don't worry about these things. Just have faith in Lord Narayan. He will protect you, us. We are not the doers. If he wants me to win, I will win. If he wants me to lose, who cares? So the word spread throughout the city of Madura, and everyone was restless, thinking, what a wonderful thing. A 12-year-old boy is challenging Kolahala, the greatest of all scholars. Who is the boy who could possibly stand up to against such a stalwart debater? And this was the talk of the whole kingdom. And the Brahmins that were all defeated by Kolahala, they now came to Yamunacharya and started offering the blessings to him, saying, may the Lord be with you to defeat this rascal who's so puffed up. So then what happened is the royal palanquin was sent to him, and he was being carried with the royal procession. The king and the queen were sitting in the courtroom, and in the courtroom waiting for the match to take place. Again, the king was bragging about the greatest Pandit, Kolahala, and he said to his queen, this Kolahala, just like a cat plays and destroys a mouse, he's going to defeat the child in this way. And the queen looked at him and said, I have information that this is not an ordinary child. If you want to know my opinion, just like a tiny spark can burn to ashes the entire mountain of cloth, in this way, this child will destroy the pride and joy of Kolahala. He will be the conqueror. The king replied, how can you speak like this? What chance does this child have against the greatest Pandit in all the world? He said, Queen, if you are saying this seriously, make a wager. I want to bet with you. The queen said, all right, if your Kolahala wins this debate, I vow to become the servant of your maidservant. And the king said, aha, and said, I vow that if this 12-year-old little child defeats the great scholar Kolavala, I will give half of my kingdom to that boy. At that time, the child came on the palanquin, very humble and gentle, paying obeisances to everyone, and the great Kolahala was sitting there, and they began the debate. It began by Kolahala challenging Yamunacharya about simple questions about Sanskrit grammar. And Yamunacharya was answering them easily and said, what do you think I am? So stupid that you have to ask me such elementary questions? Give me something hard. Then Kolavala started asking very sophisticated and challenging difficult questions. And without the slightest effort, Yamunacharya was just answering everything. Through all the prowess of Kolavala, he could not question anything to Yamunacharya that he could not answer with ease. So Yamunacharya, in a very gentle, humble voice, said, my dear sir, you are asking me such easy questions. Why don't you give me a challenge? If you can't ask me any hard questions, let me ask you 3 questions. And if you cannot answer my 3 questions, if you cannot refute my 3 questions, or prove that I am wrong, then you have to accept defeat. He said, all right. So Yamunacharya said, my first challenge to you is to defeat this, that your mother was a barren woman. Kolahala began to think, what sort of question is this? If I defeat him, I have to prove my mother was a barren woman, And if she was a barren woman, then I would have not taken birth. He was thinking like this and began to perspire. It was the first question in history he couldn't defeat. He turned pale and could not say anything, and everyone in the king's court was just silent, as they saw him without any words in his mouth. And then Yamunajacharya said, then let me present my second challenge to you. Try to defeat this. That the king is the supremely most righteous man in the kingdom. Kolahala was thinking, my God, if I prove that he's not a righteous man, he will kill me. So he remained silent. So Yamunajacharya said, my third challenge for you is to defeat this. That the queen who is sitting right in front of you, that she is chaste and faithful only to her husband. He was thinking, my God, if I refute that, the king will be very angry and I will be finished. So then Kolahala, he became very angry and lost his temper, like anything, and began to scream. He said, these are nonsense questions. They cannot be possibly be defeated. That's blasphemy against the king and the queen. I challenge you. You refute these questions, and if you cannot, then you should be killed for slandering and blaspheming the king and the queen. At that time, everyone stood up from the Kolahala's camp of disciples, and they all said, yeah, this child is to be killed. What nonsense questions. And others stood up and said, this child is putting up good questions. Kolahala could not defeat them. The condition was not that he had to answer them. He must step down from his position and accept defeat. And in this way, he must become... there was a huge argument amongst both sides. And then Yamunajacharya stood up and raised his hand and said, silence, and everyone was silent. And the 12-year-old child said, I will now completely refute and defeat all three challenges. And everyone as one was quiet. And Kolahala said, it's impossible. How can you do that? Without offending, he said first of all, Kolahala, according to the Manu Samhita, if a woman only has one child, she is considered a barren woman, and you are the only son of your mother. Therefore, according to Shastra, she is a barren woman. Everyone was silent. And my second challenge to refute the argument that the king is a supremely righteous man, Kolahala said, how are you going to refute that without offending the king? He said, according to Shastra, the king takes a sixth of the pious and impious acts of the whole kingdom of citizens. And because it is Kali Yuga, then naturally there are more impious acts than pious acts. So although the king is personally the king, is personally most righteous, noble and honorable, 1/6 of all the unrighteousness of the citizens are a burden on his back. And in that way, he is not supremely righteous. The king smiled and felt very glorified. And then Kolaha became very worried and said, my God, he could not say anything. Then Kolahala said, and what about the king? My third challenge is to defeat the fact that the queen is very faithful and chaste only to her husband. The king and the queen became very attentive, and all the guards with their swords were also very attentive. Everyone was attentive for this, and there was this utter silence. And then Yamunajacharya spoke. According to the Shastra, Kolavala, you should know that within the king there are 8 principal demigods, Varuna, Chandra, Vayu, etc. All these great 8 demigods are always present within the king. The king is the representative of these great demigods. So although the queen is the most faithful and most chaste of all women in her service to her husband, at the same time she is serving 8 other husbands. So she is not exclusively chaste and faithful only to him. And that time the king was so happy that he leaped from his throne and embraced Yamunajacharya and put the garland of victory around him, and said, "My dear boy, I have never seen anyone like this." He said, "Today I'll award you half my kingdom." And he was coronated on the day. Although he was just a poor little poverty-stricken Brahmin boy, he was made king of half the Pandya dynasty. And he was a great king who ruled the citizens perfectly, according to the highest spiritual principles. And he himself became the spiritual master of Ramanujacharya, one of the greatest Vaishnava philosophers in history. Now Ramanujacharya, although totally inexperienced in this line of life, accepted it, because he could see it was the arrangement of God. And with the blessings of his spiritual master, he became a king, a perfect king. Why? Because whatever he did was to please Lord Hari. Whether he was a little Brahmin boy pleasing his spiritual master by studying Sanskrit, begging alms door to door, or carrying water in his head, collecting firewood, the most menial services he was rendering as a brahmachari, and the next day he was put on the throne to rule armies, to organize an entire kingdom. As far as he was concerned, there was no difference between begging alms door to door, collecting wood, or ruling the kingdom, because he thought that if this is what Krishna wants me to do, I will please him. This is the consciousness of a Krishna conscious person. This is the real quality of a surrendered soul. Wherever Krishna wants, I want, and I will do. If you do it exclusively for the purpose of pleasing Krishna, that is the perfection of renunciation. We should not be attached to anything except pleasing Krishna. We should not be attached to any occupation, to any prestige, to any position in society. These things are all illusion unless we are accepting them in the service of God. If we accept them in the service of the Lord, it becomes Sanatan Dharma, the highest perfection of life. So whether you are a businessman, a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, an architect, a student, a housewife, or whatever position you may be in society, whether a brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, or sannyas, a king, these things are not very important. The important thing is why we do it and who we do it for. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed to us, the identity is that of servant of the servant of the servant, dasanu das, right? So if the Lord wants me to be the king, I'll be the king for him. If the Lord wants me to be a beggar, begging alms for my guru, then I will be a beggar. This is the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. This is the perfection of renunciation, that whatever is our occupation, according to the arrangement of God, to perform it for his pleasure, and this divine spiritual consciousness, which creates this quality within our life, is most readily awakened through the process of associating with devotees who are surrendered to Krishna. By associating with sadhus, the path of liberation and all the doors to the highest perfection of life are open wide. And what is it that the sadhus will teach us? They will teach us to perform our duty in the service of Lord Hari, and they will teach us that love